Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. I hope everyone can hear me okay and see me fine. If you are here, let me know which city you are joining from, and we'll quickly get started. Exciting day. I hope a lot of you were able to get the resources which I shared a day before, as required, as requested. So I hope everyone would enjoy and would learn something new today. Thank you, Germany, London. Thank you. Hello. Good afternoon from India. I agree. Arlington, glad to be here, awake to learn. I appreciate that it's a very odd time zone. What time is there in there, Arlington, as of now? I believe very early in the morning. Very early. Hello from Dubai. Right, good, good. And yeah, so all good. 4 a.m. Wow, that's great. Lima. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. USA 3 a.m. USA is a different time zone, isn't it? Now, I always wonder that why some countries like India and China, they never had time zone, maybe not to confuse people, but yeah, otherwise, based on the geography, they are spread in India and China. They should have at least 3 to 4 time zone, but no, it's the same time zone everywhere. It's somehow easy, but like people who are in very northeast of India, for them it will be too early morning, and then things are a little bad in terms of timing. China has three guests. I'm not sure, Ranga. Probably I have, maybe I'm mistaken here. I'm sure about India that we have only one. But yeah, uh, Bangalore, Hari Krishna, thank you. All right, so we'll quickly get started, and I'll show you that what we have here today, and we will then move forward on that. Uh, Let me add what I'm planning to discuss today. So I'll be going through technical track. I'll talk about AWS IAM, which is a very important service. Whatever you do has to interact with IAM. I'll talk about that. On networking track, we would continue with the VPN and direct connect. We will expand the network, what I call cloud and beyond. We were operating in cloud. Now we want to move forward. What are the ways? Then we will talk about hands-on, which will be working with identity and access management. And Jamila would be joining soon, and she would take care of the hands-on track. Now, just a suggestion which I had in mind means I wanted to check your idea that most of the time when we are talking about the hands-on, we are focusing on what we discuss into the technical trick, right? So my question to you is like, would it make sense that if we combine networking track to be on top, and then we have technical track here so that you could relate technical track and hands-on lab? So that's what I was thinking. But yeah, obviously I'm open to suggestions, whatever whatever is your suggestion, let me know. Should we go ahead and change the order, or are you okay with it? So you learn here, you take some time, and then you again reinforce the learning. That will be good. Yeah, okay. Yeah, means that makes sense. I would think like because once you because otherwise there is a gap in between here, and we don't want that. So let's from next time we will do that. We will keep networking track at first, then we will have technical track, and whatever aligns to the hands-on that would just follow that. So that would be much easier for you to learn. Thank you. Thanks. Let's keep moving forward. Let's talk about more stuff, and I'll hide from camera so that you can focus more on the content, and we will then discuss about IAM here. Right now, I'm not changing the order, but next time I'll change the order. Now, whenever you are sending a request to AWS, let's see what is the flow of a request whenever a request is being sent. So you want to talk to AWS, and whatever the method is, you decide to work on that. Everything behind the scene as a API, right? So we talked about that everything behind the scene is working through an API call. Whatever you do, it get translated into an API, and then it goes into the AWS endpoint. Now, where the request goes, anyone? The request goes into endpoints. My question to you is, do we have one endpoint for AWS, or we have endpoint per service? What do you think? Endpoint is the address where you go and send your request to. You do not manually go ahead and do this thing like selecting an endpoint. It automatically happens. So yes, it is per service. Every service has its endpoint, and some services even would have a regional endpoint, right? Because they are regional service and some of them may have a global endpoint also. So it depends on what type of service you are talking to. You may have a regional endpoint or a global endpoint, and some of the services may have both. So it depends. But yeah, it's a endpoint where you're talking to. You are not making that endpoint request manually, like you do not say talk to abc.com, but it happens behind the scene by automatically the tools we use now. When you are sending this request, what happens behind the scene? Let's talk about that. The request goes through IAM. Anything which you are doing has to go through IAM, no exception. There are very few exceptions, but consider, let's say, most of the thing what you are doing has to go through IAM, and IAM decides on whether to allow that request or deny that request, depending on the privilege assigned, depending on the permissions associated with your application users or users, there would be a request allowed or denied. While this happens, another service comes into picture is called CloudTrail. It is like what I call it as a camera. It is recording everything happening in your AWS account. So whether the request was allowed or denied, everything is happening behind the scene and CloudTrail is recording it. CloudTrail keeps this data by default for 90 days, but obviously you could go ahead and change it to your own requirement and keep it for longer period. You could push it to an S3 bucket and keep it there for as long as you want. So that should not be a problem at all. So I hope this thing is clear. Let's move forward. Once this thing are done, once IAM allows request CloudTrail record, then the request is released to your endpoint, and that's how your request will be taken care. Right. We will be set. Yeah, let me remove that. Yeah, I have to still get that. Not we will be starting soon. Let me remove that. Give me a minute. That has to stop, and let hope I am able to figure out a way to do that. Just give me a minute, please. Come on. Show display name and video clips, background music, banners. Banners, yeah, let me hide that. Hopefully it is gone now. No distractions. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for telling me. Now, could you please touch base on OIDC? We will see, Sam, but I'll share you one more information in a minute that I have put a training on Udemy, which has more information. So that will help you. Okay, so once you have this, we are using IAM for two things. What two things IAM offers me? First thing it offers me is authentication, right? And second, it offers me is authorization. Now, authentication and authorization are very different thing, but sometimes people relate them to the same kind of component. But I would explain that they are different. Let's go ahead and take an example. As I prefer to use analogies, let's say you are traveling to a country. If you are traveling to a country, you may be going through a passport control, and in passport control, you present your passport, and that passport would have your photo, would have a visa. Let's say you're visiting Schengen area, so Schengen visa would be there. Passport tells the passport officer who you are. It has your photo, it has your date of birth, it has a number associated, and some more cryptic information which you do not read, but the machines can read and identify the details about the passport. So that what you are, who you are, is your authentication. So I am Ashish and I present my passport, it would have the same detail. They would compare my face which is into the photo, and then they would say yes, this is the right person. So that is one part, which is authentication. Second part is, am I allowed to enter in the country or not? Or if I am allowed, what can I do there? So that is my visa type. I may have a tourist visa for a place. I may have a work visa to go into a country and work there. That is what we mean by authorization, like what can you do? So though it is a very simple thing, but you better be aware that authentication is just verification. On authorization is allowing you to what you do. Same example, like you go to a ATM machine to withdraw cash, you put your card, you enter your PIN number, that is your authentication. You are verifying you are a valid user. And afterward, you go ahead and say, I want to withdraw money or check my balance. That is what authorizations are there for you. So hopefully this thing is clear. Let's see now how we access other services in AWS. So when we are accessing services on AWS, most of the time we use three methods. We use a management console, a graphical interface. We use command line interfaces also, and we may use tools and SDKs. If we have written a program or application, it may want to go ahead and make the connection to AWS services, maybe EC2 machine code talking to a S3 bucket or a Lambda functions code talking to a DynamoDB. That would be all done by accessing these AWS services, and this information are all API calls. Right now, I would be using management console, and if I'm using that, I have to use a username and password there, and that username and password would be my 12-digit account ID and IAM username. I would be providing a MFA if it is configured, so that would be ensuring that I am a valid user. So username and password allows me to log in. That is my authentication. Anyone, how I authenticate on command line and SDK? Anyone knows about it? What methods of authentication we use in command line and in tools and SDK? Anyone? How I authenticate into command line and on tools on SDK using secret access key? Exactly. So the another mechanism of authentication is keys. So access key and secret access key, which is a randomly generated string pattern for you, is what we use to authenticate to command line and to tools and SDK. So that would be using my access key, secret access key, and I can configure it on a command line using something called AWS configure, and through this I am able to access AWS services. Right. So this is clear. This is not a very complicated stuff. And yes, AWS configure is the command we use. And sometimes if you are using some IDE, like here, I have taken a screenshot from PyCharm. If you use PyCharm, which is your IDE for Python, it has an option to configure your credential. So you could configure your credential into your IDE. And IAM role, if deployed on AWS, yes, exactly. But IAM role, Sam, are still using keys, right? You do not generate those keys, and I will touch upon that. Even if you are using a role are also using a key. A service behind the scene gives them the key, though you don't see it. But if you want, you could get hold of that key, and through that you can access it. But technically, still there is a key mechanism, even if it is being used by a role. So roles are still using key. Okay, I'll explain that now. So what I can do in IAM, obviously I could create users and all. And one thing which confuses a lot of people is called permissions. Now, idea of permission is simple. Permission is a document which is written into a JSON format, right? And this JSON document is what I could associate with something called IAM identities. So when I have a user or a group or a role, those are called as an identities. They are identifying someone, either an individual or multiple members of a group, or they are identifying a role. So these are called my IAM identities. And once you have IAM identities assigned with policy, that makes up permission. Right. Now these words are used sometime interchangeably, like I am using a policy or I am having a permission and all, but these are two different things. Permissions is what is result of assigning a policy to an IAM identity, and IAM identity could be a user, group, or role, and that is all there inside AWS, which you go ahead and create. Right. IAM is a global service, so whatever you create would be there into the whole environment. Let's say if I go to my console here and I'm trying to access IAM as a service, this is manage access to AWS resources. So through this, I should be able to create groups, a user, role, policy, and different stuff associated. And Jamila would be talking about some of the actions and help you to understand how all these things work. Right. So user is a common concept which we always find in most of the operating systems and most of the application, that you can create a user. Like maybe I am currently a user into Google, and that's why I have mail access, I have access to the YouTube videos and all. So that is my user. Now with the user, if you want, you could create a multi-factor authentication. Right. Multi-factor authentication ensure that you have additional layer of security, and this multi-factor authentication can be added by your software tokens or by hardware token. Like if you have some devices or keys, those can also be used to create these multi-factor authentication. So if their users are like root obviously you should go ahead and create MFA with that. Right now I am getting a warning in my IAM dashboard that I do not have a root user assigned. So that is not a good thing. I should take care of that. Now, what is a root user? Let's talk a little bit on that. So as soon as you say I want to create an AWS account, first user to create an AWS account, you need an email address, right? And that email address becomes your root user. Root is a pretty powerful account, and this root user should not be used for your day-to-day work. You should only use when you actually need it. Maybe sometime, let's say you have to uh, uh, control your billing, or maybe modify some billing information, some credit card details or something, then only you should be using root user. And in our first session, Prasad talked about how to create a safe account following 5 steps once your AWS account is ready. And one of them is to create an admin level user so that he or she can perform various tasks associated with that. So root is not to be used on a lightly basis. It should be used in very, very crucial circumstances. Another useful tip I would give you, like, keep your right email addresses into your account, right? Now, what happens that maybe if you are managing account of a company, when the account was created, a different email address was used, and now that email address is no longer valid, or the person left, or whatever, or nobody monitoring it, and that can create problem. Sometimes if there are some critical events in your AWS account, AWS support can try to reach you out, saying that looks like this account is victim of some issues, or maybe there is something fishy which is happening and we want to talk to you about it. And that time, if I do not have a valid email address, then it becomes a little complicated for them. So every time, let's say you are managing account, ensure that you have the right email address and somebody actually monitoring those things. Don't just put them into spam. Monitor those addresses which comes to you, monitor those emails which comes to you from your AWS support team, right? So that is my user group. And so if I see here, user creation, not a very complicated stuff. You could go ahead and create user if you want, should not be a problem. You could create user groups, and pay attention to the name. Its name is user group. So what you could add into a group, only users. You cannot create a nested group here. You are only allowed to have a group in which more users can be part, but a group cannot be part of another group, right? Then roles, I'll talk in detail about roles because this is a highly misunderstood topic. So I'll explain some of these things. And these are my policies which I can use to control access to my users and what they can perform and what they cannot perform. So if I see here, these are all my policies there. Everything I do is an API call, whether I'm creating a user or assigning them permission or giving them some access, everything is a API call, and policies are pretty simple. If I go ahead, copy this and put it on Notepad, you should not have a problem in understanding the very basics of what a policy is allowing me to do. So here you are saying this policy is version this is the JSON version. This was created using a visual editor, which is a tool, and we have allow, and we are allowing two type of action here. S3 colon star means everything related to S3, and EC2 colon star, which means everything related to EC2. So that is what we are allowing our users to do inside it. Policy itself is of no use unless and until I associate it with an entity. That entity could be your user, could be group, or could be a role. Question to you: can I assign multiple policies to a user group or a role? Can I assign multiple policies to a user group or role? What do you think? Yes, we can. Yes, we can, obviously. And that would help us in ensuring that we are giving them required access and not creating a bulk policy on this particular case. So to use user and a group to a user and a group, yes, we can. We can assign even all to the role also. So roles can also be associated with a policy. So we'll see that. And I'm not going into the user creation part and in the group creation part because Jamila would be taking care of that into hands-on. But the idea is this entity helps you to manage your AWS environment. Now, one thing which is also good to have is called identity providers. Let me explain this concept. Right. Do we have any restriction on number of policies? I don't think so. But again, I don't want to like overcomplicate my stuff. I would probably have policies associated with the uh, role a user is playing, let's say developer or QA. So I am not aware. There may be something, some number, some very high number, that how many policies can be associated, but I'm not aware about that. There is a policy size limit maybe there, but not on the number of policies. So I'm not aware on that. I may have to check on that. Anyone can check if there is a limit of number of policies. I doubt it, but let's still check it. Policy size limit is there. So yes, there is a size limit on the policy. Again, it is depending in the sense that if you are using a S3 bucket, in that the policy size limit is 20K. It cannot go beyond that, right? Good. Next question I have here: do we have a limit to the number of user group or roles we can have? I believe it is 5,000. So 5,000 users you could create into IAM, but nothing beyond it. And all these type of questions, I would say check IAM quotas. So in a quota, we will tell you that what are the service quota for a specific service. So same way for every service, there is a quota like for Lambda, for your EC2. So check those quota and it will tell you that what you could do and how much of that particular service you could utilize on that. So identity and access management and quota for service quotas. Let's see this thing here. So active quota, nope, this one is not service quota. I'm looking for IAM service quota. Let's see that. Quota name, requirement, and characters. Probably this is the right one. And here I should be able to see some of the details. So see this. So customer managed policy in account 1500. Maximum you could go to this. What is default? That this is in as soon as you create an account. But if you want to go beyond, then you have to raise a request to AWS and we would be able to create it for you, then higher number. Groups are 300, manage policy 10, and then role trust policy length, role in AWS account, you could have up to 1,000. And then IAM entities, how many access keys can they have, what are the other information. So this information, and see user in AWS account 5,000. If you large number, use temporary security credentials. So these are some of the details, and let me put this link into the chat. It's a good to bookmark, but it is not something which you would be hitting in your exam. Probably will not be asking you these numbers because these numbers can change, and that is not a good idea of anyone's ability, because these are just static number. You could come here and check, but it is good to know that most of the services have some quota, some are default and some are maximum, right? So I hope this thing is clear. Good. No worries at all. So I was trying to explain you about something called identity provider. Let me explain that. So let's say this is my IAM AWS account, and in AWS account I want to have a IAM user. So I could go ahead into IAM, create a user here, no problem at all. But what if I have 10,000 users to create? I want to give my 10,000 corporate employees to access AWS services, and it would be nightmare to create those many users into IAM and let my employees remember two password and username, one for their traditional login and one for AWS. So that is very complicated. So in these kind of cases, what we support connection of a identity provider that we refer as IDP. That stands for identity provider. So when I'm using identity provider, idea is that I would connect to some of the services which are already having users created. So I would have users here. IDP we support two, and I would say one is your SAML based and another one is your Open ID based. These are the two common mechanism for authentication. SAML, whenever I say, it means your Active Directory and Shillabot, these are all your SAML based. And when I say OpenID, Facebook, Google, Amazon login, mostly web identity, those are your OpenID based access. So you could connect it. So what you could do, you could establish a trust relationship from your IAM up to your identity provider, whether it is through SAML or OpenID. And then if your user exists in some locations, those can be allowed to assume a role here. What you would do, Once your user get authenticated into your Active Directory or somewhere, then they would be allowed to assume a role in AWS, and based on that role, they would be doing some work. So that would help me in keeping number of users in IAM into lower numbers, and all of my users would be coming from identity provider. So that integration always possible, and most of the organization would go with this kind of architecture. Otherwise, it would be nightmare to manage so many users. Are we clear on this? Any questions, any doubts, any confusions here so far? Organization is a different thing. So there was a mention of organization. I would cover that topic some other time, but it is has a different meaning. It is for multiple AWS account. I am right now focusing on a small enterprise where we have only one AWS account. So that is my call identity provider. Now let me focus on one of the component which is very confusing sometime, because sometime this is different than real world. So we will see that. Yeah, so yes, that is true. So that is true. So you are saying here that signing into Amazon online to gain access to a certificate account. I would say that is a single sign-on mechanism, right? So that is a single sign-on where you are getting logged in once and then you access multiple services. So we will see that, right? So that is how that certification account works. Question is, how does it integrate with LDAP? So what you have to do, let me quickly show that. So here I'm an identity provider. If I have to integrate with LDAP, I have to say, hey, I want to add a provider, and I would go to my Active Directory Federation services and then generate a metadata file from there. And that metadata file, I would be uploading it here. It would be basically an XML document or XSLT document through which it would be knowing that which particular device service to connect to, right? So you would come here into your console, and the process of generating this metadata file could be different. If you are connecting to Active Directory, it could be different. If you are connecting to Shibboleth, it would be different. So just check that, and it will be obviously different. It will be a URL where you would be connecting if it is an open ID connect. So you just point that file here, or you just point that URL here, and we should be able to then get association with those. Probably in some places it would be a two-step process. You would request it from here, and you will go to your Active Directory and say, yes, I trust it. So I accept that trust, and then my two-way communication would be starting in that case, right? So that's how you will integrate your LDAP here. Okay, now let me now focus on the other concept, which is called roles. Roles are sometimes very highly misunderstood, and I will use some analogies to explain you some of the concept so you could understand it better. Probably most of you relate this character here, this famous actor Jim Carrey. He's a Canadian American actor, and he has been into lots of movies, really great actor, and he has worked in different movies. I'm just giving some examples here. So Bruce Almighty, he played a role of a god. In The Mask, probably most of us have seen that. He played a role of a green thing. And in S. Ventura, he played a role of a pet detective. I didn't know he was Canadian. Yeah, he's a Mex-American Canadian. So yeah, Canadian American actor. Now, what is happening here? This is one person, but depending on the movie, he is assuming these character or he is becoming this characters. So temporarily, let's say he's shooting for the mask, so he would go into the makeup of this green thing, would paint his face, would have a fancy yellow color suit on himself, and once he's done, he would come out of it and again become Jim Carrey. I don't think that he would be going to every place dressed like this, not every place. Probably when he is on a movie set, he may be using this. So what he is doing actually here, he is assuming a role. He is becoming something, finishing his or her work, and then coming back to what they were doing beforehand. That's what we mean by a role. So, roles are the best way of assuming something, doing something, and then going forward and performing those specific tasks. Yes, it is a temporary, exactly, Rashmi. So, we don't want it to be permanent. I don't think that Jim Carrey would like to be 24-hour dressed like this or have a funny hairdo like this. So probably he would come back to become himself like this. So that's what we are doing. So this is an identity. and we are trusting our identity to assume a role of it. So a movie director has to say that, hey Jim, you are going to be playing a role of a mask, and this is how it would be. And in that, you would have some superpowers. Like in this movie, Bruce Almighty, he played a role of God, and he was able to do lots of crazy things. Obviously, nobody can stop God. So same thing here. Let me now relate this example to your AWS account, and I hope you would be able to retain this concept for a longer period now. Now, I don't know why, but Jim Carrey is the best example of this role. I'm going a little bit deeper into the movie The Mask. If you remember the movie, this is the mask which he could wear and he becomes a different person altogether, right? That's what we are doing here. What he would do, he would assume the role of a green thing, finish the work, and once work is done, he would again become Jim Carrey. So that's exactly what happens when he has wore this mark. He has got some superpowers which are beyond this person who was named as Stanley Ipkiss into the movie, who was a bank clerk, and now he has become a green thing. So when you are assuming a role, you come out of this persona and you assume a new persona altogether. It is completely different set of credential which will be given to you, and then you can perform various tasks depending on what you are allowed to perform, and you can consume whatever you want. So what happens behind the scene, let me talk about some of the mechanism behind the scene. What happens? So this is your AWS account. In that AWS account, we have a role created. Role itself won't give you power. What you have to do, yeah, exactly, that is also true. That is Shaktiman. I like that. Shaktiman, if for people do not know, it is a Indian superhero, Indian Superman, and Spider-Man. Obviously, a lot of people know, so shouldn't be a problem. So in AWS, we have a role created, and what I could do, I could assume this role, and that will be done by an identity. Now, this identity could be a IAM user, no problem at all on that, or it could be an external user who is coming from any other identity provider, doesn't have any problem at all. So what you could do, you could go ahead and create a role in AWS, and that role can be assumed by IAM user or external user if you want. Now, role itself is of no use. With role, what you have to do, you have to also associate a permission, or which is what we refer here as a policy. So role would be just assumable, but the policy is which is giving us power to perform various tasks, right? Another example of assuming a role could be, let's say we log into Linux machine, so we get to dollar prompt, right? So we are, let's say here I'm saying I want to do yum install httpd. Probably my request will be getting denied. Why? Because I do not have permission to install something. I am logged in as a standard user. So what we do in that case, we say sudo and whatever command. This is what we are doing. We are saying, hey, perform the task as a super user. Or you could just say, I don't want to change anything. I just say sudo, and my prompt now changes to hash, which is a indication that I am now on to a higher privilege. And once my work is done, I would now go ahead and say exit, and I would come back to where I was. So this is again an example of switching a role, but in Linux context, right? Coming back to this, so now I have a role and a policy associated. At a time, you can assume only one role, nothing beyond it. And role can be assumed within account or across account, no problem at all on that. Once you assume a role, your existing identity goes back and you get a new identity associated, by which you should be able to get a policy on that, and then you can perform various tasks associated. So I hope this is clear. Now, question is, if I have a role created like this, what stops user Ashish to assume that role, or user Jamila or Abhijit to assume that role? Anyone? If I have a role created, how I can control that only one of these person or all of them can assume that role? What is the way of controlling who can assume the role? Anyone? How I control who can assume a role? I don't want everyone to assume a role. That would be a nightmare. Anyone? Trust relationship, I agree. So there is something called a trust relationship, right? And through this trust relationship, you could ensure that only specific people are allowed to access this particular thing. So yes, there is a trust relationship. Don't call it trust relationship, but it is a trust policy. So actual word for that is called a trust policy. And now again, I have some crazy ideas to explain you the trust policy. Let me go ahead with that crazy idea and explain you. Yeah, you can think about me and you can judge that I am more inclined toward movies and all. Let me take another example of movie here. Trust policy, yes, that exactly the thing, Haripriya. That is what exactly I am going to explain you about trust policy. Right. Service control policy is different. Service control policy has nothing to do with role assumption, but it sets boundary for what maximum you can get, right? So Sunandam, it has nothing to do with role. It just control what maximum you could achieve in your account if you have a service control policy associated, and it would only come into picture if you are using AWS organization. Without it won't work. Right. Now, I'm going to the next topic to explain you the trust policy. People who are Marvel fan or read Marvel comics or watch Marvel movies, they would know about Thor. It's a god of thunder, and this person has a hammer which is called Mjolnir, and that is something which gives him power for doing whatever crazy thing he wants to do. So this Mjolnir is not something which I could go ahead and pick up or any other person can pick up. Hope you get the idea. So anyone who wants to pick up that hammer, it would check, Mjolnir would check, is it person Thor? If it is, I would allow it, right? Otherwise, I won't be allowing a person to lift myself. So that's what exactly happening. This trust Thor to lift it. Similarly, you would have a role created, and in that role, you would create a trust policy, and in that trust policy, you would have utilized these things. Right. So hopefully this thing is clear and you get an idea on what is a trust policy. So trust policy allows you to define who can actually assume that particular thing should not be a problem at all. You could define whoever it is, and then in the list you could add IAM users, or you could add any other users coming from other identity providers. So roles are really, really useful for whatever you perform in your account, right? Hopefully everyone is following along. Question from Sunandam. Sir, I have a question. Where can I share those? So I would say put them into chat. If it is very long, then reach out on LinkedIn. Otherwise, if it is something which I could answer right now related to IAM, put them into chat and let everyone get benefited by get those questions. So no problem. But if it is something else, you could utilize LinkedIn on that. All right, good. Okay, now what is that? Question is, are service link role created automatically? Answer is yes. A lot of role would happen automatically into AWS. They would be creating these roles for you just to facilitate your working. We don't want everything to be done by manually. So we will have a lot of role pre-created for you, but you are not bound to use them. It is just easy for you to use them, but it is not mandatory to use them. You can create your own role if the need be, right? So hope trust policy is there. Now let me give you an example. Let's say you want to allow a user Q1 to assume a role, giving him or her permission equivalent to a developer user. So what I would need to do that, I want my Q1 user, maybe this is a QA person, and he wants to become a developer to perform something. Let's see what happens in this case. What is the three-step process I have to follow? So what I have to do first, I have to create a role, right? So this role is something I would be creating, same like I create a user or a group. Similarly, I could create a role. Once I have this role created, I would add Q1 as a trusted principal to assume the role. So I would assume this role and say, Q1, I am allowing you to assume this particular role. And on that role, I would associate permissions which were equivalent to a developer user, and then only your application would be able to assume a role. So this is what happens behind the scene. Let me quickly go into console and show you a quick switch of a role. So I'm here currently logged in as a admin underscore ash user. This is my account ID which I am logged into. And if I see this thing here, these are my role history. So AWS console maintains up to 5 previous role you have assumed, and through this you should be able to switch role. When I want to switch a role, I need to know the account I want to switch role in. It could be the same account, right? So I could put the number here. I need to know the role I would be assuming. So I should know the name of the role I want to assume, and I could display a better name for that. So let me call it as a I am a QA admin. I just want to display it, and I could go ahead and create a different color icon to identify that I am in a different role, and now I am switching a role. So I was in different account as admin underscore Ash, and now I have switched and become a different person in a different account altogether. Here you could see I am a QA admin, and this is a different account. And what I have did, I have assumed role. I am currently active as this user. I signed it initially as admin underscore Ash, and now I have assumed the role of QA admin. Let me show you this role. This role exists in this account, which is 8634. So let me go ahead to this role and show you what is there. So I'm going to my QA role. So this is my QA admin role, which I want to assume. See this trusted entity to whom I am trusting this role to be assumed by. So this is my trust relationship on the role. And here I am saying I am allowing a user coming from this account to assume the role. I have given root means everyone in that account access, but if I want, I could have restricted it to a very specific use case if the need be, and we could put some conditions also if you can retire. Right. So thanks Farna for mentioning that. This is the right definition, the official one. Trust policy defined which principals can assume the role and under which conditions. So this is my trust policy. I am saying anyone from this account can assume a role. Why? Because I have given them a permission called STS assume role. STS behind the scene is the service which is giving you the temporary token. I would give you an example in a minute. What is this STS service and how it works? But this is what my trust policy is. So I am assuming role, and then what can I do with that role? That would be controlled through the permission which I have associated. So here I have given administrator access permission to this role, and that's why they can perform all the stuff if the need be. So I hope this thing is clear. And if I'm done with my work, I could switch back and I can utilize. Can we say principal is a user? Why not? You can. Any identity can be principal here. So see this. In a principal, I have used this, but I could have gone back and I could have said that, hey, I want to update this policy, and instead of instead of root, I want someone else name to be added there so they could perform that operation. So yes, you could put anyone's name here, even somebody coming from external services, they can also be part of it. So yes, you can have principal as a user, but it is not required to be only IAM user. It can come from outside also. All right. I would say any identity can assume a role. That's all. Okay. Any questions so far? Any doubts? Any confusions on this? Okay. So so you have a role. Role has a trust policy. Trust policy says who can assume a role, and then you have permission which tell what you can do after assume a role. And policies we saw that can be assigned to a user, or policy can be assigned to a group, and you can use a role to be assumed by a user, or you could assume a role through a service also. So services which are there like your EC2 services or Lambda services, they can also assume role and perform various operation in the account. So that is all possible. Right. So that was a quick introduction. I'll quickly summarize it. So role can be assumed within AWS account or across account. At a time, only one role can be assumed, right? In AWS, the roles are represented by a hat, right? Not the best drawing for a hat, but you get the idea. So at a time, a person can have one hat only, nothing beyond it. So just be aware, at a time you can wear only one hat, nothing beyond it. So if you want to assume another role, you have to log off from one role and then wear another hat that will give you access to another role. A service can assume a role like SQS can assume a role. Yes, exactly. So that is true. Service can assume a role. SQS do not write anything, Sunanda. SQS is not compute. So you would need a Lambda function or a EC2 machine or some code execution engine like container who could read from SQS, because they would need compute power to perform a read operation on SQS. So SQS won't write itself. What you would be doing in this case, you would have a SQS. Let me draw that. So in this case, you would have a SQS queue, and in that SQS queue, you would have your application data. This is what you want to write to a database, but you would need somewhere in between, maybe a Lambda function, maybe a EC2 machine, maybe a container who would read and who would perform write. So SQS can't assume a role and write it. That won't work for you. Compute services, that where we want to execute some code, maybe a glue crawler, maybe a EC2 machine, maybe a Lambda function, they can assume a role. I hope that thing is clear. Okay. Now, if you want to play more, I have given a link here called Try Web Identity Federation. So this will tell you about very basic stuff you can try into role assumption. This is a open service you could try. Here, they are showing you that how you log into an identity provider. Let's say I log in with Amazon.com here. And once I am authenticated in Amazon.com, Amazon.com generates a token for me. So I sent a request to Amazon.com and say, hey, Amazon, can you verify me? So it verified that I am Ashish as a user and it has given me an access token. Now, I could take this token and now talk to a service called STS, and then I'm saying I want to assume a role in a different account. This is a open application you can try on your own. So this is a role ARN. In this account, I want to assume this role if I have been verified by Amazon. So I would send a request here, and this token I am presenting, and I am making a call to the operation called call assume role with web identity. And now the service, which is called STS Security Token Service, has verified that I'm a valid user because I'm carrying Amazon's token, and it has generated a access key and secret access key for me. So even if you are doing roles, there is always a access key and secret access key involved, as you could see here. And once I have this access key and secret access key, I could now make call to a AWS service. Like here, I am making a call to an S3 service and say I want to list the bucket in that account, and I am able to see the buckets which are available into this particular account. That's what I'm doing. And if I want to run another action, get object, so I am getting the get object response from it. So even with the role, there is always a token involved which is generated by STS as a service. So I hope everyone has got a better idea on how these stuff work. What I have also done, I have yesterday published a training on Udemy, free training, 2 hours. Now, I can't cover everything in that training because Udemy restricts 2 hour maximum time frame for a free training to be made available, nothing beyond it. So I have published one yesterday, and I would be sharing that link so you could go ahead and learn a little bit more on IAM. What I could not cover here, that is all available there. So just published last night. I would share this link here in the chat, so please go through that training and let me know if there are any feedback, or if you like the training, please provide the rating and enjoy it. Right. So anyone can identify who has the token can access it. So let me read the question again. What is the question? Question is, so anyone, any identity who has the token can access it? Absolutely yes, unless you put some conditions. So it is my token. Like, think like you have your office badge, right? So when you go to office, you just tap your badge, and through that badge you get access to the office. What if I give my badge to my colleague? Then my token is given to them and they can perform, right? So same thing exactly, that yes, if the token is shared with someone, then they can use it, but you may have some criteria, like some companies say, hey, you have to use fingerprint for login. So you can't use a badge because fingerprint, you can't cut your thumb and give it to someone to mark your attendance, right? So that won't work. But hope you get the idea that yes, you would need a identity to assume a role. Question from Hari Krishna Reddy is, you will provide part 2 of S3 and part 2 of IAM as well on Udemy. I'm not sure on that, Hari Krishna, as of now. I have limited time, but at least the basic services I plan to cover initially, like every part 1 of core services like EC2, S3, VPC. And then when I get time, I would get more parts rolled out, but at least basics I want to cover so that everyone has a basic understanding and then they can move forward on that. All right, good, thank you. Uh, how pass roll works, we do not have time, but I would be happy to explain it maybe offline. So just get in touch and I would be happy to explain that. Thanks for Parna for sharing that. So there is a way of called pass roll. So through pass roll, I am assuming a role from another entity. So that can be done. But yeah, I would stop now. I'm already 5 minutes over. So let me put a break here, and then we will come back. And obviously, I have used this IAM one pager, so it will be showing this, sharing that also on the resources page. So just get hold of that, and it should give you good idea on the basics of IAM as a service. Okay, so enjoy your 5 minute break, and we will start soon. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you in five. I'll put a timer here. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is back. If you are back, type in chat what you've recently purchased online. Maybe Amazon or some other places. What you have recently purchased, let me know. If it is not something very personal you don't want to share, that's completely fine. Dress for your kid. Yeah, see this is I was also saying the same thing. A book, that's a good one. Holy dress. Nivedita, do you need dress for Holi, isn't it? Come on, you just need to wear something which is not useful anymore, and that we put it into Holi dress. People who do not know Holi, it's a festival of colors in India, and it goes crazy. I have very good memories of playing color with my friends, but yeah, and for me, the Holi was like whatever dress you don't want to wear anymore, you would wear it out on Holi because by the end it would be just all gone, all into colors, can't be used again. But yeah, that's a good thing. Book Atomic Blonde and RAM module DDR3. Wow, you are adding more memory. Painting, that's interesting. Military helmet, where are you going, Yuri? Probably I get your idea. Sorry for that. I get your idea now. And Raghavendra, same for you. Life in India is colorful 24 by 7. I agree. I miss that vibe. I'm planning to visit in August, and hopefully, I would be able to have some of that vibe with me. All right. So I'll keep moving forward. And I wanted to share also what I bought, obviously, based on uh, all our kids. So my son is now newfound interested into gym. So I like that comment. I can't stop laughing. Now people buy new clothes for Holi. Yeah, that's a different story. Yeah, world has changed. I have got old. I agree on that. Yeah, but hopefully. So I was telling that I bought something for weightlifting for my son. It is a belt which they can wear into um, their, I don't know where it wear, probably into the waist, and through that they can have more weight on themselves. So that's what I have bought for him. And I don't know how all these things are invented, who invents it, but I feel it's a little too much. But obviously, you do want to fulfill whatever your kids want, and I'm in the same boat as you, most of you. All right, good, thank you. Let's move forward and let's talk about the next topic. Right, so we talked about it. Sorry, I was not displaying out on screen, but hopefully you have uh, use. Let's go ahead and talk about side-to-side VPN and direct connect here. Uh, okay. We already know this picture. I hope everyone is following along what we have been doing into the whole networking track. We are building things piece by piece. And what we did here that we have our networking sorted out, we have subnet sorted, we have route table sorted, we have NACL and security group in place. And now we want to extend it to the next topic. Okay, so next topic is our on-prem network connectivity. We want to go beyond the VPC. How we do that? So let's say this is my on-prem network and I want to connect to on-prem network. What could be the use case? Why somebody would like to do that? Maybe you are doing like a hybrid architecture, right? So you want to run some application, some portion in cloud and remaining portion into AWS. So that's why you would be using a hybrid network, and that's why you would need connectivity. That is one reason. Maybe I'm doing migration. I'm moving my on-prem stuff to cloud, or maybe from cloud to on-prem, whatever it is. So migration could be of data, could be of application. It is purely up to me. Or maybe I am extending my footprint in the sense that I do not have sufficient capacity in on-prem and now I want to use cloud for some capacity need, maybe temporary, maybe permanently. So these are some use cases why I may be using a hybrid connectivity model, and let's see how it is implemented. Now, whenever you want to implement a hybrid connectivity, you would need a gateway. We have talked about few gateways by now. We talked about internet gateway, which allows you to connect to internet. We have a NAT gateway here. NAT gateway allows you to communicate from private network to external network. So that is your NAT gateway. Similarly, when I plan to talk to my on-premises network, I would be needing a gateway also in this particular case. And that gateway is called my Virtual Private Gateway, VGW. So VGW is what I would be needing, and as you see here, a VGW is associated to a VPC same way like I have associated an internet gateway to the VPC. I would go ahead, create a VGW and say, hey VGW, you would be connected to a specific VPC, and it would be a way for you to go to external on-prem networks, right? Question to you. If I want VGW, do I still need to have internet connectivity? Is internet gateway required for VGW? What do you think? Do you need internet gateway to use a VGW? What is your guess? Do you need that? Yes and no, yes and no. No, we do not. Yes, we do not need that. Maybe we can keep a network which is completely internal. We don't want to expose it at all to internet. So no, it can't be private. Yes, it can be private. So we do not need internet gateway. But probably if you want to keep everything private, then probably you would be using just a VGW. And once you have this VGW, it allows you to create two type of connection to your on-prem. One type of connection we can use is called a direct connect, or DX for short. And another type of connect we can have is called VPN connection. So you could utilize both of them, or maybe one of them. Purely depends on use case what you have. So you may utilize a direct connect, or you may utilize a VPN connection to communicate to your on-prem environment. Now, the VPN which I am going to explain here is your site-to-site VPN. What I mean by the site-to-site VPN, I have a cloud site here in a region, and I am connecting the whole site to my on-prem network. That is another site. So this is referred as a site-to-site VPN. VPN connection is slow, isn't it? It depends, I would say. I would talk about that. We will see that how it is slow and how it is fast. So I'll talk about that, because what you could have a direct connection in 1 Gbps also, and a VPN gives you 1.25 Gbps. Now tell me which one is fast, which one is slow, right? So I would say these type of questions, slow, fast, are relative. So it depends what I have. So I may have a slower direct connect connection and a faster VPN connection. That can also happen. Yet, but most of the time VPN are limited into the bandwidth they can offer, but there is a way to go around it. We will talk about some of them. Question from Pawan is that in case of direct connect, we use direct connect gateway, right? Not always, Pawan. It can be used and it is a better choice, but it is not mandatory to use direct connect gateway. Direct connect gateway is a good use case when you have a application which requires a multi-region connectivity. So right now, if you see this connection is bringing me to only one region. But what if I have to go to multiple region? And that time DX gateway would be a better choice. So we will use DX gateway that time, but not for every use cases. So maybe I'm starting small and I do not need DX gateway. Why I would go for it? So it's not mandatory, but it is good to have if you have a multi-region architectures, right? Hope that answers your question. So these are the two options for me, how I would use a VPN or I would use a direct connect. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, I can't explain things without taking an analogy. So let me take an analogy here also to explain you about VPN and on-prem direct connect connectivity. We all board flights, right? Think about a commercial flight. What you have to do in commercial flight, you have to go to airport, wait for your turn to be boarded, buy a ticket, and you get one ticket into a flight. You sit on that, and with along with hundreds of other passengers, you also move from one place to another place. That's what a commercial flight is doing. It is cheaper because the cost of the whole flight is divided into different people. Depending on the ticket, depending on how many people are traveling, a flight could be cheaper or costlier, but it is much cheaper than having a private jet. So when you are using a commercial airline to go from point A to point B, basically you are using a site to site VPN in a way, right? It is operating from one specific city to another specific city, or one country to another country, and then you are just using existing flying network, existing airline who operate. You just buy a ticket and go through that. That's what my commercial flight are allowing me to do. But if you could afford, you may go with a private jet, right? In that case, you decide what what stopovers you have to make. You decide when you have to take off. You decide which seat I want to get into. You decide that what type of private jet I want, and that is all in your own control. That is a direct connect. That is your private connection going from your environment up to AWS, and only you have control on that. Control in the sense you select what you want to use it for, you select what type of data would go inside it, you select the encryption is needed or not. So that is your private jet. That is your site to site VPN or your direct connect connection. Right. I hope this is a better example. And now I would relate these things and compare it into the different aspect of it. All right. Anyone, any questions on this before I talk about differences between them? I do not have time to explain everything, but I'll at least give you the idea about site-to-site VPN and direct connect and some use cases and some technical differences so you would understand it in a better fashion. Right. So site-to-site VPN and direct connect, what are the use cases for that? So if I want to connect remote network to AWS VPC, which does not require heavy data transfer or does not require a consistent connection. Consistent connection is not needed. Maybe I connect from my on-prem environment to AWS every evening, transfer my data. Once my work is done, I disconnect that. So I do not need a constant connection to AWS. That time, site-to-site VPN is a good choice. Right. When you do not require heavy data transfer or don't require consistent connection, then you can use site-to-site VPN because you start when you need that connection, start your VPN. Once your work is there, you tear it down, you end the connection. So that is a good use case. Direct connect is a path which is regular. So connecting remote network to VPC, which require heavy data transfer or require a consistent connection. So if you have to utilize a lot of stuff and send a lot of stuff from your on-prem to cloud or vice versa, then you would use direct connect. Think of it, direct connect gives you a bigger pipe. And a pipe which is always connected, and you do not have to establish that connection. VPN connection you have to establish every time, or you could keep it completely 24 by 7, but direct connect is 24 by 7. Right. At least you pay 24 by 7 whether you use it or not. So that is what my direct connect is. Now, what else? Choose site to site VPN when your cost is important. You don't want to pay a lot of money for data transfer. You have small amount of data to be transferred and priority is cost, not the performance, not the consistency. That time site to site VPN is a good choice. Direct connect can give you predictable performance because that is your flight, right? So you know your personal flight, your private jet won't be delayed because of some person are missing into the flight. You could decide to take off without them. You could start any early morning flight or whatever. So it is predictable performance. When you have that importance, then you would go for direct connect, because when you are getting a direct connect, you are getting a SLA associated with that, service level agreement. So whoever your vendor is will give you, let's say, 1 Gbps connection or a 10 Gbps connection or 100 Gbps connection to get started, and that will give you a predictable performance. So, right. So when performance is important, predictability, consistency is important. That time you would be using a direct connect connection. Next is supported suite. Site to site VPN by default support 1.25 Gbps per tunnel. What is tunnel? So let's say this is your AWS endpoint, and you would connect to this AWS endpoint from your own site. So this is your on-prem location. In on-prem location, what you would have some type of device here, probably a router, or I would just call a VPN endpoint as of now. This is where your connection would be established. So this may be a one endpoint. What AWS is doing, you connect to endpoint of AWS, which we call VGW, and AWS create these endpoint for you. These are two endpoint. Though it looks like one VGW, but technically it is having two endpoint associated. One may be into AZA and another into AZB, and then you establish a tunnel like this. So this is what a tunnel would be established between your endpoint. Now, Though it looks one connection, behind it, what is happening that there are two tunnels formed. So if I use a different color, so technically it is one connection, but on that there is one tunnel and there is another tunnel formed on that. So these are my tunnel 1 and tunnel 2. Tunnel is the path on which my data would be going. At a time, one tunnel is active in default condition and one tunnel can give me 1.25 Gbps of traffic. One is active and second is standby. It is not doing anything, but it is waiting. If primary fails, if active fails, it will take over and then I would be able to transfer data using it. So that's how I would be getting 1.25 Gbps. But in case of direct connect, my speed can be depending on the connection I ask for, 1, 10, 100 Gbps. And some of the service provider even can give you a smaller speed connection if you need to. So they can take a bulk connection from AWS and subdivide that speed and give you, let's say, 50 Mbps connection or 100 Mbps connection. It depends on the service providers, right? So that's how you would be utilizing speeds here. I hope everyone is following along. Now, how it works, site to site VPN establishes a tunnel over existing internet connection. We need a backbone, and that backbone here is inside to site VPN connection is internet. So when I'm saying I have my AWS environment here is on my on-prem, in between we have internet connectivity. So we would be just using this internet as a mechanism of data transfer, like a commercial flight I'm boarding which is going from a city to another city, and that network already exists. Nobody is starting a flight for myself. There is already flight there, I'm just buying a ticket. So that exactly same thing. How it works, site to site VPN establishes a tunnel over existing internet connection, whereas direct connect establish a connectivity over a dedicated network, does not use internet. So if your use case is, hey, for security reason or compliance reason, I can't send any data over internet at all, I want to keep everything private, that time I would be using a direct connect. And direct connect, think like this is how your network would be established. You won't be talking to internet at all. Without internet, you would be sending everything. That is your direct connect connection. This one is internet, and then this is your VPN connection. So I hope this thing is clear. Right. If you have any questions, any doubts, put them into chat and I'll look into it. Next is high availability. Site to site VPN are highly available on AWS side. VGW is deployed across 2AZ. I explained that. And then direct connect is a single connection. There is no high availability by default. When you get a direct connect connection, your service provider gives you one connection. If it breaks, your connectivity would be lost. So you may decide that I may want to use multiple direct connection for high availability, but that effort you have to put, it is not there by default. You won't be using it, right? Right. Similar to on-demand EC2 and reserved, in a way, yes, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Uh, I see one drawback is dependency on public internet line, both and these should be up every time. Yeah, I agree on that. So again, it depends what you are looking for. So yes, that is sorry, give me a minute. I by mistake closed this. Come on. I was trying to click something else and then I ended up clicking something else. So let me come back to this particular slide again. And yes, there are some limitations on high availability of it. So it will depend on what you are looking for in your application. Right. So you decide on what you see. Question is, are the difference in encryption between site-to-site VPN and direct connect? Good question. Anyone wants to answer that? I would obviously answer, but I want to know if somebody has some idea on encryption between site to site and direct connect. That is my next point here. Site to site VPN are encrypted by default. They use IPsec. They will always be encrypted. Everything IPsec would be used in this case. Direct connect is not encrypted, right? Direct connect is a direct connection. Let me give an example, very funny example. So when you are traveling into a commercial flight, right? Though it doesn't happen, but maybe I would keep my suitcase with a lock on that or my bag with a lock because it would go through a public network. But when I'm flying into my private jet, do I have to put a lock on my suitcase? Probably no. Same thing applies here too. So direct connect are not by default encrypted. We expect it is a physically separate connection, so you do not need encryption by default. But if you want, you could establish a VPN on top of Direct Connect for encryption, but encryption is not by default there in Direct Connect. Site-to-site VPN always use a IPsec connection for this. So just be aware that encryption is differently implemented on that. So it depends on what you're establishing. VPN would always have encryption, whereas your Direct Connect will not be having connection. So question Rashmi is saying that Direct Connect is more secure. I agree on that and do not agree also. I would tell you why. Because see, Direct Connect is expecting that you have a physical security, right? So you are on a physical security. That means that you are connecting things from here to here and nobody is allowed within that path. But it's my data encrypted? Answer is no, right? In VPN, your data is always encrypted, right? Yeah, you want to secure your bag more. I agree on that. So yeah, I agree. So that is one example I wanted to share. So hopefully this thing is clear, right? Let's talk about the next point here, the difference between them. Site to site VPN require very minimum time to set up. You can decide to go for it in a self-service fashion. Whenever you want, you could go ahead and say, hey, I want to establish a site to site VPN. I do not want to go ahead with lengthy procedures of approval and all. I could establish within few minutes my site to site VPN, right? But Direct Connect works with a service provider. I will draw a little whiteboarding thing so that you would know it better. But Direct Connect would always require you to have a service provider, and that service provider would help you to establish your connection. So it may take time, maybe few hours, a few days, probably it would be required before you can get set it up, right? Another difference here is in cost. In a site-to-site VPN, you pay per connection hour and data transfer out. How many hours you keep your connection running, how much time it was connected, and how much data transfer you do, you pay for that. In a direct connect, you pay a variable port fee and data transfer. Variable port free is basically saying that, hey, if you are using a 1 Gbps connection, cost is different. If you are using 10 Gbps connection, cost is different. So this is a difference between site to site VPN and a direct connect. And I would be giving you the service summary pages of both of them. So go ahead and check that into the resources section. I already uploaded them. So you should be able to get these one pagers of site to site VPN and direct connect here, right? Now let me go to console and show you some of the stuff so that you could relate to what I'm trying to explain you here. Give me a minute. I'm coming back to my console here, and here I would be going to my VPC to establish these settings. Let's go to VPC. If there are any questions, any doubts, put them into chat and we would be happy to answer those questions. So I am on my VPC and I would find a section by which I could perform my virtual private network or VPN connection. I could go ahead and set up. Let's go ahead and see options on that. So VPN has 3 requirements. I'll explain them one by one. There is a need for a customer gateway. There you need a virtual private gateway and you need a site-to-site VPN connection. Better would be that I explain it on a drawing so that you could relate to what I'm saying here. So this is my on-prem environment. This one here is my AWS connection and I want to establish connectivity and I'm assuming everything in between is what my internet is. So I want to leverage a VPN connection. To get started, what components I need? You need 3 things. First thing you need is a VGW on your side. So you would be needing a virtual gateway. You would create this virtual gateway and you would associate it with a VPC. You would create a connection from a VGW to a VPC. So that is the component you would need on AWS side. So you say, I want to create a VGW. You would get a VGW created. You would associate with a VPC. Obviously, in this VPC, you would be creating a routing table entry for this data transfer to happen. But this VGW is your Amazon side of network. Now, next thing here is on-prem. What you need on on-prem? On-prem, you would be needing a physical device or a software device which would become your VPN connection endpoint. So I would be needing here a VPN endpoint. You could decide what you want to use for this VPN endpoint. Do you want to use a hardware based devices, or do you want to use a software based device, or a software running on a EC2 machine? It is purely up to you what you decide on how it works. So you decide on that. So you would need that physical component on your side. So this one would have a public IP address. Right. So this is on your side. It is maintained by client. It is on-prem environment, so you would maintain it. Now, what you have to do, you have to create a link to that, and for that, we create here something called a CGW. Now, this confuses a lot of people. CGW stand for Customer Gateway. What a customer gateway is? Customer gateway is a logical representation of customer device, logical representation of a customer end of VPN connection. This is a representation. What I mean by that, that you would be creating the physical VGW on the customer side, sorry, physical VPN endpoint on the customer side. On AWS, you would say how I want to talk to it. So I would be needing a IP address for that. So once I have a VGW setup, this is what I would create. CGW, I would just point to it. And once this is ready, on top of it, what we are going to do, we are now going to establish a VPN connection. So three components are required. First, you would need to set up a VGW. You need to set up a pointer to CGW on the customer side, and once both are there, you would combine both of them into a VPN connection, and that's how you would be establishing the connectivity. On-prem, do we have route table too? Answer is yes. Nothing works without route table. So whatever you are doing, route table always needs to be there. Route table would always be needed. Without it, route table, nothing would work for you. So yes, you would be needing route table also. Right. There was a question on transit gateway. We will talk about transit gateway into coming section. So we will talk about that. What is the IPsec tunnel? Next question here. IPsec tunnel is a way where we encrypt the data when it is going. So physical connection is there, and then we create like a safe passage between these two. And whatever we send before we put encryption on top of it here, and we decrypt it here before handing it back to it. So IPsec tunnel is like a wrapper around whatever data you are sending. So let's say I am sending somebody a package. Now, I don't want to keep it into a transparent box so that everyone can see what is inside. So what I would do, I would put that into a other box which will hide the content of it. That is in a way is a IPsec tunnel. So whatever data you send, it would put an encryption on top of it, send it to the next point, remove the encryption and deliver data back. That's what we have. Right. So we will use IPsec tunnel. Right. Yes, it is on CGW by default, Sunandam, but you can create CGW, create tunnels on your direct connect also by establishing VPN on top of it, right? So what I would be doing here if I have to connect, I have to connect through a customer gateway. Give me a minute. So I'm having here a customer gateway. Customer gateway is what we connect to. We just establish a customer gateway and say, hey, what is your IP address of customer gateway? And I would be utilizing that connectivity there. Right. So customer gateway, I do not create, I point to, though it looks creation, but what I'm doing here, I am just providing the IP address of my customer endpoint. And once I have, I would be able to establish connectivity on that. So customer gateway is you connect to, and VGW is what you create. So here I am on my VGW, and I would be able to create a VGW there. Right, so I am again on my VPN gateways, and here I would be creating a VPN, virtual private gateway. And once this virtual private gateway is ready, see this, I'm connecting it to a VPC once it is created. Right now I have to just say I want to create it, done, give it a name. Once it is created, associate with the VPC. And once both your CGW and VGW are ready, Then you would connect them into a site to site connection, and that would establish your VPN. So when I'm saying I want to establish a site to site VPN, let's see what we provide information on that. So when a VPN connection is needed, we will say I want to create a VPN. I would say which is my virtual private gateway and to which customer gateway I want to connect. And once this is ready, I should have no problem in accessing these services, right? So I hope this thing is clear and you get a better idea on that. And see this two tunnels. So this will be tunnels created on top of it. That's what we would be utilizing it, right? So tunnel is an overlap on top of existing underlay physical network. Exactly, that is true. So the tunnel is something which is establishing on that. What is BGP peering, which is part of CGW? BGP is a protocol which is used by these routers to communicate and share information. So broader gateway protocol is a way the or the language which this router speak to explain others about what network they are connected to and how to route to them, what are the best path available. So uh, it's like some let's say sometimes what you will find that on a highway when you are driving, some drivers will tell you that hey, there is a police check or there is a camera, so be aware about that. That the language of a driver's communication, that the same way routers communicate to with each other to tell whether they are connected to a network, how to route to that, what is the best part to reach, and that language of communication is called BGP. It is a protocol which you may use for communication, right? Another question, can we practice both S2S VPN and DC on a AWS account? Ranga, S2S is much easier to practice. VPN, sorry, site to site VPN can be easily established, but for direct connect, answer is no. You would have to establish it by talking to a service provider. I would draw some detail and it will tell you that you may not be able to practice direct connect. Why? Because it requires a third party to establish a physical connectivity to your environment, right? So site to site VPN, yes, you can, and there are a lot of options available. You can use OpenSWAN VPN plus AWS. So this is a software. Install this on a EC2 machine or on your on-prem environment, and through that you should be able to communicate to AWS. So these softwares are there, but Direct Connect is a physical component, so you won't be able to practice it unless you are willing to spend that much of money. Right. What happens if a company want to terminate their direct connect? Is there a protocol on how they must do it? See, it depends on which service provider you are connecting to. Right. So let me draw that and it will be much easier for you to relate all these questions related to direct connect. Let me go to direct connect first and tell you how we would get started. So when you want to establish a direct connect, you need to select a physical location which is near to you. And then you would say, I want to create a connection. Right. So here I am creating a connection, and in that I would select what my requirement are. Let me keep it simple. Let's say I'm using it for development and test. What I would have to do, I have to go through a physical location and see this. These are physical locations all over the world where we have a direct connect setting available or direct connects available. So if I'm in London, I would be selecting something which is in London. So if I want to establish a direct connect to AWS London region, probably I would be connecting to these companies like Digital Realty or maybe Telehouse, and they would give me the connectivity. Let me draw it, and it would be much easier for you to understand. So this is your AWS environment. You want to connect to it, and this one is your on-prem environment. What you want a physical connection. AWS doesn't have physical connectivity up to your building, but a service provider, let's say British Telecom or something else, they would have a connectivity up to your premises. So what you could do, you could go ahead and select a DX partner, direct connect partner, like we just saw the name of Telenor or other companies, British Telecom, AT&T, maybe Equinox. These are all the companies who are direct connect partners. What these direct partners are, what AWS has done, AWS has kept a rack of network equipment in their physical premises that we call AWS cage. So that is referred as AWS cage. Cage is just a name. It is basically a networking rack which has a connectivity from it up to AWS directly. So this physical connectivity we have already established up to a DX location. And now you say, okay, I want to use Telenor or maybe Equinix or British Telecom as my DX partner. So what this service provider would do, this service provider would create a physical connectivity up to your on-prem. So there is a physical connectivity required for direct connect to work, and that physical connectivity would be coming to their rack in the same location where your AWS connection is there, where AWS cage is. So this is my DX partner cage or my communication partners cage or a networking rack. So that physical path has to be provided by your DX partner. So that's why you would have to talk to them, and then you will decide what is the nearby location, and then you would establish a connectivity there. Once this physically is sorted out, you would raise a request first to AWS. So how the process works, if you need a direct connect request, you would raise a request to AWS and say, I want to connect to this physical location through this DX partner. All right. AWS will inform that partner, and that partner will then communicate to you and then establish the physical connectivity. Once this physical connectivity is ready, what we would allow a communication from this to this rack. Get the idea? So we would have a connectivity from this rack to AWS rack, and now these two ports are physically connected. Basically, it is like a link which we establish from our networking rack up to DX partner rack, in which your connections are terminating. And once this established, you get a full physical path to communicate from you up to AWS. So this is what happens in case of direct connect connectivity. There is a part which has to be taken care by your DX partner. They would establish the physical connectivity, and once this is done, you would be able to send traffic out. So that's why there would be a cost associated with all the process of direct connect, because otherwise, why they would establish a physical connectivity to you. I hope everyone is following along and getting the idea of how DX actually works, right? So any questions on this, any doubts, any confusions? I hope everyone is following along. And as there is a physical component required, there would be cost associated. And then this DX partner can decide what speed they can offer, 1 Gbps or 10 Gbps or even 100 Gbps. So it will all depend on which partner you are trying to work with. So if I go ahead here, so if I am selecting Digital Realty, they are having only 1 and 10 Gbps connection speed. Let me check with, let's say, this one is here in US West 2, and this one will connect me to Miami and Equinox, and Equinox in Miami gives me 1, 10, and 100 Gbps connection. So it depends. DX partner also has a route table. Obviously, they would have, see, route table is always required whenever a network is involved. Anytime you are trying to communicate, route tables are always there. But what happens that they would take care of routing table on their physical routers. You would take care of routing table entries on your side, but everything requires a route table. Without route table, there is no communication at all. Right. Route table is a Google map. Unless you know how to go, you won't be able to see how these communications are there. So you would always be needing in that. When you connect with DX partner, you can connect to any DX partner in the world. I would say it depends, right? So if you have a lot of money and they are happy to give you connection at that location, why not? Right? But what if I am a, let's say I select a partner Equinix, which is in Miami, and say, hey, I want to connect it from my London office. They would say, okay, we would establish, but that would charge you a lot of money. You get the point? So because they are dedicating a physical connection for you, it may be too much money which you may have to pay for that line which is only for you. So it won't make sense. Technically, Equinox may give you if you are paying huge amount of money. Otherwise, you would not be you would be looking for something which is near to you, right? So same example of a flight. Let's take an example. So I live in a place in India which is called Indore, right? So I belong to that place, and if I have to come to London, I do not have a flight. What I have to do, I have to catch a flight either to Mumbai, or I catch a flight to Delhi in India, or from Indore I can catch a flight to Dubai, and from there we have a direct flight to Heathrow. You get the point? right? So similarly, what would happen that if I want to fly directly to from Indore, maybe it is, but that would be costing me too much money, that the cost would be much higher. That's why it would matter to have a direct connect partner which is local to you, and then only you would be able to access it in efficient way. Same like you have a internet service. So let's say I'm using internet of Virgin, but in your location it could be a different service provider. So you may need to be working with the local provider within your location. All right. I hope that makes sense and you have a better idea on what it is. And yes, direct connect partner location matters because that is what you would be paying for getting that connection established for you. So I'll stop here. I already have taken 5 minutes from Jamila's time, but I hope you have learned something new and have a better idea on Direct Connect. Hopefully, you have enjoyed and learned something. And we'll be sharing all these resources, all the details we have shared on the resources page would be available there. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'll hand it over to Jamila now so that she can walk you through the process of AWS IAM and tell you about other stuff associated with the establishment of the user identities. And from next session onward, we will try to align the hands-on with the track and maybe reshuffling the networking track and technical track so that you would have a better understanding. Jamila, are you there? I can't see you on the camera. Give us a minute, everyone. Let it be here. Let her be here, and we will get started. Uh, Give me a minute. Let me ping her separately on a different channel. I can see she is into the stream, but somehow might be a camera not working or something else. Give me a minute. I would try to establish a contact with her. Okay, give me a minute. So check out while we are waiting for her, check out the training I shared. So check the link on Udemy, and if you like it, please give ratings and let me know any feedback you have. If you like it, share with your friends, family, and they can also learn it. Again, I said that there is a limitation of 2 hours on free training on Udemy, so I can't go beyond it. So my plan is initially to cover the basics first, and then I may create some training which are focused on certification itself. So we will then see that. Okay. Uh, yeah, she responded, and let me add it to this. One question, what is WIF? WIF is a virtual interface that has something to do with your direct connect. So we will talk about that when the time permits, but let me stop now and add Jamila to screen.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, JJ, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, good. Thank you, Ashish. How are you?
All good, all good. Yeah, busy day, I would say.
Yeah, nice, nice. I was listening and the your explanation. It was fascinating, especially with the movies. I mean, I will remember it for long with all this mask and Jim Carrey and everything.
Exactly. Yeah, that movie is like that was very when one of the very early movies I saw of that character Jim Carrey, and I was amazed by the acting he has done. So yeah, means I've become a fan after that movie. So
I'm also a big fan as well, but I would never guess the connection between that. And I am like sometimes even confused that, hey, did I create the role? Did I create the group? What's the difference? Like sometimes you get confused, but with your explanation, I think I will never get confused. And if my clients are asking the same question, I will just shoot this recording. I'll say, okay, watch it. And it's quite
good,
cool.
good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
So
Ashish. I see lots of people are hello, ever smiling Jamila. Oh, thank you. People are saying exactly the same even in the office. Like, hey Jamila, why are you in a good mood? Like, what's happening? I am most of the time. Um, like smiling in a good mood, because it's my personality, to be honest. It's not just something happened and triggered my smile. I'm just that kind of person who likes to kind of be in a good mood, spread the energy, because I believe that once you have a good energy, you pass it to people, and anything can be possible in a good environment. Let's see who is Master of Analogies. Ashish, I agree. Completed both S3 and IAM trainings, rated as well. Thanks for sharing on Udemy. Exactly. Thank you. Oh, I see Parna. Hello, Parna. You give a lot of positive vibes. Fantastic. That's what my clients are saying as well, and my team members as well, especially when I'm in the office, like a butterfly moving around. It's a good therapy for the soul and leads to longevity of life. I agree. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Cool. So I have a lamp here, which is supposed to work, but sometimes it is working, sometimes it's not. So if you see me kind of in a dark mode, it's just because my lamp is respectfully failing me. Nonetheless, so we are going to start walking through the IAM workshop, because our master of analogies and the brain behind this whole training and information sharing, Ashish already shared the bits and parts. So I don't want to kind of explain like the details over in the workshop, but rather we'll show you hands-on part, how we can actually get started, what is the main kind of pain point we hear across from different people who started to use AWS and their preferences. So again, as we did last week, I'd like to share the workshop link here in the chat. It's General Immersion Day. Last week we covered compute, Amazon EC2, and this week we will be covering IAM hands-on. So let me share my screen and we can go ahead and discuss what we're going to do today. So abracadabra, let's start sharing. Select window. Screen one. Okay. Right. Okay, I hope you are able to see my screen. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I can see that you are able to see my screen. So this is the workshop. Yes, someone said yes. All right, cool. So this is the workshop. IAM hands-on lab. So as I said, it's the continuation what we started. It's level 100, meaning it's pretty straightforward. I don't want to say basic because it might seem a bit rude that, hey, you're showing us some basic stuff. But if you're just starting with AWS services and you want to see kind of how things are kind of stitched together, then this is a pretty go-to workshop for you. So IAM hands-on lab, this is the overview. It explains what it is, what it does. And here, there's a phenomenal architectural diagram which kind of explains you what is this lab about. So sometimes when I speak to people who are using AWS or who are planning to use AWS for different environments, they always say, hey, we really want to make sure that we restrict people from accessing specific resources. Meaning, if it's a developer user, we don't want developers to shut down an EC2 instance in production. We want to restrict that access, or even spinning out unnecessary EC2 instances, which will cost us, of course, more money that we don't want. But we want to kind of be able to set the specific permissions for specific user groups and for specific users. So how do we do that? So this is basically the diagram. So we are going to create two instances. Again, what I did beforehand, I created already these two instances before the show yesterday. So I created two instances. I will walk through how I did that based on the workshop, so you can do this similar on your own. Two instances, and then I added the tag for the instances like dev instance and prod instance. And then we are going to create a user. We will name it developer dev user, and then we will go ahead and create a dev group as well. And we will attach the permissions. What we are also going to do, which is my personal opinion is really cool, is that when you actually create permissions and assign users before sharing all this whole setup with the users, you would want to go and test, hey, how is it gonna look like from that person's or that group's perspective? Is it really working, or maybe I missed something, or maybe there's something that I gave more permission, less permission? Like, how exactly is it gonna look like before I actually add users or share this setup with my group, with my team? So we have a tool which is here, which is called, how is it called? Policy Simulator. Test the access for resources. So basically we have the policy simulator. We will go ahead, we will select the group, and we will simulate the policies for these users. And we will see, okay, like if we stop the instance, what's going to happen? If we shut down the instance, what's going to happen for those users? So you are able to see before actually implementing in production or sharing it with your users. Any questions so far? Type it in the chat. I will be happy to see who are listening or who are putting me in the background, who is speaking and sharing this positive energy. So far, so good. Great. Thank you. Yes, great. Nice. Okay, fantastic. We can get started. So let's go ahead and launch EC2 instance. All right. So I will just move it away like this. Still following along. Fantastic. Thank you. The Real Coffee Brown. What a nice username. EC2. So we are going to create the EC2 instance. This is my dashboard. I just want to kind of show you the EC2 instances. Oh yeah, by the way, I was testing one of our new services, AWS Cloud 9 Code Whisperer, which is, I don't want to say alternative to ChatGPT, but whatever, it is kind of similar to ChatGPT, which is called Whisperer. And to be honest, it was fantastic. I really, really loved it, especially the integration with Visual Studio and with Lambda. Oh my Lord, it saved me tons of times, especially when I have to code and I don't have much time, but I need to prepare the demo. So this was basically the instance I set up in Cloud9. Code Whisperer was working amazing. So if you haven't tried, by the way, you can go ahead and try it. Cool. So Besa prod instance and Besa dev instance, that's what I created. We can create all together as well. I just want to show you way to actually tag the EC2 instance, because if you don't know how to create an EC2 instance, which is absolutely fine and absolutely normal, you can go ahead and watch our previous recording in the previous week 3. So you will see, like, I was presenting how to create an EC2 instance. Here, I will just walk through how to do it like quickly, but what I want to focus on, name and tags. So we will follow along the workshop. Here, launch an instance. Here we go. So the name we can do, for example, Besa production instance, for example, right? And then there is a button here which says add a tag. So if we're going to add tags, So with key, I can write it's gonna be environment, and the value I want to say that it's production, prod or production. Production sounds a bit silly, right? Let's do prod. But because I already have prod, it's kind of nonetheless. Okay. So environment prod, right? And then we go ahead, basically leave all the other settings as default. T2 micro, which is free tier eligible. Okay, key pair name, I used Besa Twitch or Besa Program 2 that we all created last week in our live session. So you can use any key pair that you created earlier. So, and then I just use the default VPC, no preferences for subnet. I say, okay, create a security group. This is again not secure, giving access from anywhere and 0.0.0, like all this setup. This one is not secure at all, but for testing, just for seeing how things are working in the background, it's good enough. I don't want to give access to allow HTTPS traffic or HTTP, so I just leave it as it is. And here you see that once you allow it, it gives you kind of a warning, just be aware, etc. We are aware of the risk, and I'm not running on that instance anything production ready or anything sensitive, so I'm okay with whatever we've got. So summary here, it says what we're going to do, and then if you hit the launch instance, it will launch successfully. But because I'm frugal, I don't want to launch an unnecessary instance, and which will eat up my environment and will cost me additional money, or maybe not because it's tier 2. Nonetheless, so Besa dev instance and Besa prod instance. So basically, with the same logic that I showed you, you will need to create 2 instances. One, it will be for production. One will be for dev. Let's go ahead and see what is. So the workshop basically says exactly what I said. It shows you how to create name and tags. So the first one, dev instance, and then the second one will be the prod instance. And then once you create it, you will see like here. Once you create it, you can go ahead, like click on Besa prod instance, and then you can go to tags. Oops. Okay. And in the tags, you can see name, Besa prod instance, and the key here that it's environment and it's called prod. Same goes to dev instance as well. Okay. Besa dev instance, environment dev. Okay. Now we are going ahead. You've deployed 2 instances with different resource tags. Fantastic. Now we're going ahead to create IAM identities. So let's see what we need to do. So here it says you need to create dev group, and then dev users, attach permissions for dev users that they are allowed to access or stop, in this case, the EC2 instance with the tag name dev, and they're not allowed to access or do anything with prod instance. So for that, we're going ahead. Yeah, here is an important also kind of part, is that they are asking for, they're saying about you need to log into IAM console, and you need to generate console login sign-in URL, which you can customize it. So for customization, once you log into your IAM dashboard, you will see a similar UI. And then here you click on create, and you create with the preferred alias. And I'm going to show you, because I already created it, I'm going to show you how it looks like once you create. And that's what I did. So here I had a button to create a customized URL, and then I added account alias Besa Twitch program, and then this is the sign-in URL for IAM users in this account. So later, like in a couple of minutes, we will copy the link, and then we will log in with the users that we created, and we will try to access or stop the instances that we allowed or we did not allow to do anything. Like dev user is not allowed to stop instances in prod account. That's what we're gonna do. So for that, yeah, I just customize the alias and URL in this setup. Cool. So once you save the changes, it says you need to go to policies and then create a policy. So what the policy says here, that effect allow to all EC2 instance. And the most important part also here is that resource tag environment, which will be dev. So what we're saying is that they are allowed to action as an EC2 describe, but deny if they're trying to delete tags or create tags. And resource for all. Okay, so here it explains as well, when defining policy, you can create and edit in Visual Editor in or JSON. We will use JSON method, and what I did, so I just copied this policy. Again, for production environment, we do not recommend to do the same, but for your testing purposes, for learning purposes, go ahead and click the copy button here, and then create the policy. Create the policy with the policy name called dev policy. All right, so if we go policies, right, and then if we create a policy, okay, here you can use Visual Editor. That's what the workshop was explaining, or you can go ahead and say the JSON. And then you can copy and paste the policy from the workshop. Okay, so then you can go ahead and click the tags button. As far as I remember, it doesn't add any tags. You can add some tags if you want to, but in the workshop, as far as I remember, it didn't add any tags, but rather it just added the policy name, dev policy, the description, and then it created the policy. Let's go ahead and review. So the name could be like dev policy. You can describe that this is a policy for dev users. EC2 full tagging, explicit deny. This is allow what is happening. And then we hit the create policy button. I'm not gonna hit the create policy because I already have the policy, and that's what I did yesterday while I was preparing. So what we can do here, so once you hit the create policy, it will create like literally in a few seconds, and then you can go ahead and search for the policy that you just created. It will look like this, dev policy, and you can expand and see what is this policy all about. Yeah, it will deny, delete tags, create tags. It will work for dev environment. Cool. Let's cross-check together with the workshop, right? So here, click user groups. So we need to create the group, and our group will be dev group. And then it will attach the permission policies for that group. The permission policy will be the one that we just created. And then at the end, we will add users. Cool. So we're going to user groups. I already created dev group. But just to show you how to create, so you just write the name here, Besa dev group. And then you can add the users. I already created dev user yesterday because I was testing things. So you will see here dev user. But if you haven't created, don't worry, it will be completely empty here, which is absolutely fine. And as it says here, it's optional. So don't freak out that, hey, I don't have a user to add my group. It's absolutely normal. So here for permission part, you will need to add dev policy. you will need to attach this policy for these user groups. Okay, and then we hit the create button, create group, and it will create the group for us. All right. Yes, I want to leave. So this is the basically dev group you will see that's been created. You'll see the permissions that the policy attached. You will see you have the access advisor, which kind of explains the allowed services, like a high level definition of what's going to happen with this group. Next, we're going to create a user and then attach this user to that, add this user to that group. So pretty straightforward, right? We go to user, we create the user, we give the access what we want to give to the user, and then we add that user to the group. Sounds pretty cool. So we go add users, let's say Besa dev user. Do we want to give that user access to AWS Management Console? Yes, I do. And then I want to create an IAM user here. I don't want auto-generated password, but for security, if you prefer that, auto-generated password will be secure and safe. In this case, I will just use custom passwords, whatever password you want, and then you can check leave as the default, like they checked. Users must create a new password at next sign in, which is recommended. Like if you are going to set a password for the user, and then you give it to the user, and then as soon as they log in, they will be forced to change their password, which is, again, a good security practice. In this use case, and when I created, I said no need for that because I am the user who will be using this kind of user and group and testing it all. So I don't want to be bothered with changing the password, creating a new one, because again, I'm the only one who's doing all these things. So, and then I click the next. Okay, apparently I need to say something here, and then I need to click. Oh, all right. I wanted to cheat, but it didn't let me, which is fine. So then it says, let's set the permission. So it asks, you can either add user to the group, attach policies directly, or copy the permissions. I'll leave it add user to group. So what is the group? We have dev group. That's what we're going to do. Do we need to add a permission boundary? No, I'm not adding, at least at this time. I'm going to simplify my own life because as soon as I add permission boundary, I get personally confused. But it is also a good practice to know what is a permission boundary, because it's kind of, it covers an additional layer of protection as well. We're going to keep it simple. And then we go and see review and create. Okay, so you see that user details, what is happening here, require password reset, no. And then you hit the create user and the user will be created. Yes, I'm sure to leave this page without saving anything. So here we see the dev user, the user in dev group. Last activity was 19 hours ago, which is correct. Password age 19 hours ago. That's it, basically. If we go to user, we can see if there's any tags, and it says also the console access enabled without MFA, multi-factor authentication. It is in one group, and security credentials, we can see what is happening here. The console sign-in link. Okay, so once we created the user, we added the user as well. And then you go to click on sign in URL and log in as dev user. So it will look like something like this. We will have dev user, we will have the password, and then we will log in to the console from this dev user. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Okay, so here we have the dev users IAM username. We are going to write the password. I hope I remember which password I set yesterday. I really hope so. Fingers crossed. Yay! It was correct. Cool. So what we're going to do, we're going to EC2 instance. So here you can see that it is a dev user at Best Twitch program that we created. Now we go to EC2 instance, and we will try to mess up with the EC2 instances that we have. All right. So let's say like I'm a dev user and I just decided that there's no need for prod instance to be running, which is a weird scenario, but whatever. Let's just try to stop this instance. It gives me a huge fail to stop instance and says that you are not authorized to perform this operation, encoded authorization failure message. So, which shows that whatever the policy we just attached to this user is working and is correct. That this user is not does not have permission to stop or to do anything related to prod instance. And if we go down this side, that apparently this user also is not authorized to see alarm status. For that, you will need to add in the policy, like, do you want this user to see the CloudWatch describe alarms or not? I didn't set anything. I kept it simple as it was in the workshop. But if you see alarm status here that it is restricted for this user, it's absolutely fine. All right. All right. But if I want to see if I can stop the dev instance, we can do that too and see if it is working for dev instance. Oh, it doesn't. All right, fantastic. And now I don't remember if I try to stop. Okay, it says dev instance, was it to stop? Now I don't remember what policies I actually give it. Okay, allow describe apparently everything. So it will deny delete tags and create tags. Cool. Where we can also test it, test the policies. Let's leave this user alone, basically. If we go to, give me a second, I will need to connect to my admin user, which will take me a few seconds. My admin user, education, admin. Okay. Okay, so if I go to my admin user, right? Admin user, yeah, if I go to IAM, Oh, I'm still in dev user. Oh, goodness me. Goodness. Okay, I need to somehow show you that. I need to, what I'm trying to do is to access my admin user and show you how I can test the policy before I give to my dev users. Oh, it's not working. All right, so is it possible? Give me a shout if you see my, okay, give me a second. Okay. Give me a shout if you see my screen. Yes, no. I hope you're able to see my screen, which I didn't want specifically to share this. Okay, cool. You can see my screen. Okay. So if we go to IAM, And then here, or if you go to the workshop, you can see the policy simulator. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I will go and simulate the policy, whatever I want to attach to my user group, and see does this make sense or not. So if I go to dev user, which is the basically the users that I want. Now I'm struggling because I need to follow along. Goodness, sorry for this mess. I'm trying to use my laptop, not the second screen, not to bother you all. All right. I hope. Okay. So now we're testing the access for resources. No, we don't. I want to go to, okay. You can go to IAM Policy Simulator from workshop, or from the link that I just showed you on IAM console. So you go and select the dev group. What it says here, if you have tons of groups generally, you can just search here and then find the dev group. Here you're going to run the simulation, but before that you need to choose what policy you want to simulate, right? Here you have Amazon EC2, and then two actions, which will be delete tags and stop instances. I think I played around something similar yesterday, and I probably messed up something which wasn't specifically working now. Okay, which actions we want? Okay, delete. I think it was delete, right? Delete instance. All right. God help me to find delete instance from this list. Yesterday I was quite frustrated as, okay, delete tags and stop instances. Okay, not the delete instance, but delete tags. Okay, cool. So delete tags or describe tags. Okay, delete. I found delete. Okay, delete tags and stop instances was somewhere at the bottom. Yes, stop instances. These are the two things that I want to simulate. Delete tags, why it says resource not. Okay. Then once I selected the policy simulator for what I want to simulate the policy and actions, I can run the simulation for this dev group. If I click the run run simulation, I can see that the permission is denied. And if we open up this bit, and then we can see why it's denied. And we can see that the statement here, it says deny, easy to delete tags and create tags and resources are all. And if we go here, we can see that for all instances, yeah, that is the reason it didn't work, right? So for all instances, for this user, it's denied to stop the instance. That's the reason I couldn't stop the instance in production and in dev. However, if I'm going to change and add the instance environment dev, right? And then I say, hey, not for all instances, but maybe for dev, oops, it will be allowed. So let's say I understand I just ran the simulation, or I just ran the actual kind of action. I tried to stop prod and dev, and you saw that in both cases it failed. And I thought maybe I did something wrong or messing up with something. Apparently, in the policy, I specified that for this user group, deleting tags and stopping all instances are denied. Unless I specifically add the dev, it will be allowed. So if you go to your policy, so this was just a simulation. It doesn't mean if I go now and stop the dev instance, it will work. It will not. But if we specify this bit in our policy, then it will be allowed, and we will be able to stop the instance in dev environment. Any questions? All right. Assign IAM role for
This is good, Jamila. Just one thing I want to share that if you are using a policy based on tag, be very careful to whom you allow tags to be added or removed. Like you mentioned, otherwise somebody could misuse tags. They may assign a tag and they get better privilege than what we were expecting. So control who is allowed to create tag and who is allowed to remove tags also. Otherwise you would be signing up for a lot of complications. So it's a very nice feature, but it has to be taken into consideration about the tag permissions itself. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Absolutely. So it was currently it is the end of the workshop. The next part says assign IAM role for EC2 instance and test the access, which is kind of related to S3 bucket as well. Feel free to go ahead, create, walk through this workshop, and then clean up the resources by terminating your instances so it doesn't cost you. It's not running automatically or it costs you money. Feel free to delete your user groups, users as well, and the policy as well if you don't require, as it says in the workshop. And then, yeah, let us know if you have any questions. But basically, yeah, this was the end of the workshop that I wanted to share with you. Ash, you are on mute. Fantastic.
All right. So can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Yeah. So I was saying that it is very important to practice, otherwise, you will lose track of what you learned. So keep practicing. And if you
Mhm.
check the resources section, we put some links where you can go ahead and practice these things. Already, Jamila shared workshop that is there. And I have put a link where you can practice for free on Quick Labs. Quick Labs give you some free accounts. So check the resources page and you will find a lot of information there. I have added some video links also and additional resources, so learn on those things, and unless you practice it would just wash away. So don't delay it. Maybe take a day or two, but at least practice, or at least go through this demo again, or read the workshop. If you can't practice, at least read to understand like what is available and how you can utilize all these things. So hopefully that would help. I wanted to also thank Abhijit, who was helping us with the chat today, but he is now gone, so I couldn't add him. But yeah, he's been helping behind the scene with lots of stuff which we are doing, and this program is only possible because of volunteers like Jamila, me, Abhijit. We are doing this in all our free time, and we hope you are getting the value out of it. So spread the word. We can see a decline in the number of people joining, but that's completely fine. Not everyone can devote time, and being consistent is the best complicated thing, I would say. Enrolling for something, joining one session or two, it's quickly easy, much easy. Like we have full energy to join on the very first time, but to keep that consistency is really complicated. And we appreciate you are still here with us in week 4, and we hope to deliver more sessions to you. Anything we can do differently, any more suggestions you have, like we are trying to add resources at least a day before so that you can go through those resources and ask question. And I would be also changing the sequence. So we will have networking track first and the session next session, and then technical track, so that it will be followed directly with the hands-on to give the flow of the session. So that would be much better. So keep these type of questions coming up, sessions coming up, and suggestions coming up, and do share, do like, and let us know how we can improve it.
Thank you, Ashish. And I see in the comment section, lots of people are saying good things, saying thank you so much all for joining, for listening, for bearing with us as well. And I wanted to also thank Parna, who is one of our
Yeah.
colleagues. Joining, volunteering, helping in the comment section. We really appreciate your support, Parna. And we wanted to thank all of our volunteers in the background who are tirelessly working and while we're planning what to do on top of our day-to-day job. So thank you all, and it wouldn't be possible without you all.
Yeah, exactly. So have a good one, everyone, and we will meet you next week with more interesting stuff. And any between, if you have any questions, any suggestions, just let us know, and we would be happy to accommodate that. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.